If you like to laugh, and who doesn't, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to My Funny House with the Powell brothers. Frank Powell is a real estate broker who was born and raised in San Diego, along with Frank's brother Mark, a real estate broker who also lives in San Diego. Each week, the Powell brothers bring in a special guest comedian to share hilarious real estate stories so you can learn what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership. So now, let's get into it. With My Funny House, here are your hosts, Frank and Mark Powell on The Answer San Diego.
Good morning, San Diego. My name is Mark Powell, and welcome to My Funny House. I'd like to introduce my guest. Well, not my guest. You're my partner.
I think I'd be your partner and your brother.
My brother
but
and my partner.
But I could be your guest if you want me to.
He's all three today. My guest, my brother, and my partner, Frank Powell.
Good morning, San Diego, and welcome to another episode of My Funny House. And today we have the legendary funny man, Tony Calabrese, in studio with us.
Hey,
Say hello,
Tony.
Tony.
How you doing?
Hey, Tony's here. Yo, Tony.
Hey.
We'll talk about Tony later at the end because he's flying high now that COVID's over and he's able to do his shows. So, Mark, what are we talking about today?
Okay, this week we're going to talk about how to price your home in a seller's market, because I get calls, text messages, emails, and my house is worth this much. My house is worth this much. And I'm like, well, it might be. It might even be worth more. So we're going to talk about how to price a house in a seller's market, which is what we're in right now. So anyways, Frank, can you tell us what's the first thing you should do when you think about pricing a house?
Well, as an agent, when you think about pricing your house, obviously you want to do a comparison and you try to do apples to apples. So what you do is what's called a CMA, comparable market analysis.
Yes, that's where a realtor, such as myself or my brother or whoever else you're working with, does an analysis of homes that have recently sold within the past 6 months. It's typically 6 months within a mile radius of the subject property, which would be your house, and within 15% of the gross living area or square footage. Those are essentially the three criteria that a realtor will use to determine what the value or what the list price should be of a house. But Frank, what's the difference between a comparative or a comparable market analysis and a home appraisal?
Well, the agent does a comparable market analysis, which kind of gives you an estimate on the value of your house, and so does an appraiser. But the appraiser is used to do the loan, so the bank will use the appraisal report as part of the conditions to fund a loan. They will not use a comparable market analysis, even though they could be relatively the same.
Yes, there's also something else. It's called a broker price opinion, a BPO, and that's another tool that agents can use to determine the price of a house. So, Tony, what do you think about that?
I think it's much harder to bribe an appraiser than it is to bribe a real estate agent. I'm not saying that's what I've heard.
Well, it's probably true. And but another thing is when the appraiser is doing the appraisal, the person purchasing the house cannot interfere at all. They can't call them up and say, no, you need to do this. But the seller can talk to the appraiser and say, hey, I've done this to my house. You may not know this, but I have really good electrical or insulation in my house. Is that correct, Frank?
Yeah, they can enhance it because there's no two properties exactly alike, even if you have a model match. So model match means, let's say you look at your next door neighbor's house and you live in the tract homes. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's made by the same builder, the same year, and has all the same features. However, one of them is completely renovated and has all the top-of-the-line appliances and granite countertops and kitchen and remodel and hardscape and landscape, and the other one doesn't.
El Paseo Grande in La Jolla, El Paseo Grande, that street, one side of this street is right on the water.
Correct. One of them has the view and one of them doesn't.
And one of them doesn't. So there's going to be a substantial difference, even though they're on the same street, even though they're all multi-million properties. The one that's going to be right on the water is most likely going to get a lot more money than the one that's behind it.
And the way you do that is if you have two houses the same and somebody's going, well, my neighbor across the street sold it for, let's say, $1.5 million, and you're telling me to list mine for $950,000. Well, that's called adjustments. So you have to make adjustments when you do the report. And one of the adjustments is a view, which is a very subjective value.
That's correct. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, hey, I know a guy who sold his house and he had it on the market. It was only on the market for 3 days and he sold it for $100,000 above the list price. So what does that mean? He sold it for $100,000 above the list price.
Well, it means that he probably had an agent that strategized to reduce the amount the value by 10%, 15% in order to have a bidding war to go back up to the value and above the value.
So it's a marketing strategy, correct?
It's a little marketing strategy. But one thing you mentioned earlier, Mark, I want to mention, you mentioned a BPO, a broker price opinion. So you had the CMA, comparable market analysis, you had the appraisal, and then you had this BPO, broker price opinion. And the BPO was created in the day back in 2008 when there were so many houses going on the market due to foreclosures and those bad loans that they actually hired brokers to give an opinion. And that held a lot more weight than even a comparable market analysis. And they would pay brokers to do what's called a broker price opinion for the banks that would help them out because they didn't have enough appraisers to go out there and appraise all these houses that were going on the market at the same time.
As a former banker, though, I can tell you that we would not take that. We would go off the appraisal. And that's the other thing I can't really figure out is now you're seeing prices, people selling, like you said, $100,000 more. But what's the bank going to be willing to finance it for? They're only going to finance it based on the appraisal.
That's correct.
So I don't care how much.
So here's what's
unless you've got a lot of cash.
Oh yeah. So it's either all cash. But what's been happening is sellers are saying, "I will accept your offer that's $100,000 over the list price. However, you have to remove your appraisal contingency, and that means." If it comes back below the list price, you still have to buy it. That's about correct, Frank?
Yeah, well, I think that Tony, which is awesome, that used to be a bank president. So he went from bank president to comedian.
No, I didn't. I wish.
You know why he was a bank president?
I wouldn't be sitting here.
He used to hold them up.
Sitting in Maui. So I was in 37 bank robberies in 30 years.
Were you really?
Yeah.
What's that like?
How many of the bank robbers were related to?
Most of the time, you don't even know what's happening.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they use a note?
Yes, most of the time. It's a note.
Really?
But there are times when it's not a note.
So if you want to rob a bank, you just get a sticky pad and a pen?
You get more robbing your local 7-Eleven you get
Right.
from a bank. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
I heard that the average amount that you get is only a couple $1,000s max from a bank robbery. And
If that.
Okay, for all you burglars, robbers out there and criminals, I'm going to tell you something.
And now this show is completely changed.
When you rob a 7-Eleven store, the police respond. When you rob a bank, the FBI responds. Why is that, Tony?
It's because the FDIC insures bank. It's a federal insurance, and that brings in federal agencies for protection. Even counterfeit. If you get a counterfeit bill, Secret Service is involved. So
don't rob banks because the feds will never let you.
Well,
go.
does the money actually blow up when they walk out the door?
I can't tell you that. I could tell you, but then I'd have to,
Oh yeah. Then I want to stay around for a while. Okay, well, let's get back here. We digress a little bit. Okay, so
we like to digress in this show.
Let me ask you something. One thing that people look for when they want to price a house is something called DOM. DOM. What is DOM?
It's the amount of days on market. So you want to see this house is priced, because you have active listings, you have sold, and you have pending. So you go to the active listings and you say, how long has this house been on the market? I know you want, $1 million for your house in Claremont, but it's been on the market for 75 days. So you want to consider that when you're pricing your home. Yeah, it's listed high, but no one's bought it yet. And in this market, if you're there for 75 days, you have the wrong price. Period. End of story.
Yeah, in my family, we go to the dawn for the right price. It's a little bit different.
Close, a little bit different.
That's true. Okay, Frank, so days on the market could indicate one thing. It could indicate that the house is overpriced. But what about homes that aren't overpriced, but maybe they're renter occupied? Could that?
Oh, well, that's if you look at the renters now, they have a lot of rights, which some I agree with, others I don't. And it is hard to sell the house if the renters decide they don't want to leave.
We got
That's true. And they don't have to. And in fact, I think that moratorium on evictions was extended until September now. It's supposed to end in August.
We don't know when that's going to end, to tell you the truth,
Yes.
because you have state regulations, you have city codes, and you have the county making the county supervisors.
Right.
So that's a tough one. You know, you can have a situation which I just came in contact with. You had a guy that was in the military. He served time as a combat vet. He's flying back to San Diego. He wants to move back into his condo, but his renters said, we're not leaving. So the guy who owns a condo, who fought for our country, cannot get his own home back because the renters will not leave.
Give him my number.
Give him my, yeah, send him to the Dawn.
It's unbelievable. Okay, there's basically 3 strategies to listing a house for sale and selecting the right price in a seller's market. Let's just go over the first. The first strategy would be listing at current market value. What does that mean if you list it at current market value? How would you determine that?
Well, you do that with your CMA. Your comparable market analysis will give you a medium, a high, and a low. So you want to use that to determine the current market value. And a market value is just like anything. If you go to an outdoor market and you see how much fruits cost that day, or what strawberries cost per pound, or so forth, it's what the market bears.
What about some of these services online like Zillow, where you can look up the value of something? Does that hold any water?
Well, there's
plenty of online search. That's
plenty of them,
another one.
but what I've found is that they vary so much. I mean, I can get one that says this house is worth 1.8 million, another one that says this house is worth 1.3. But when you read the fine print on most of these online public search sites for the regular consumer, there is a range. It could be between this and that. Whatever.
Right, the 10% either way. So you want to have an agent that knows the market, that knows the neighborhood, that knows the trends, and that knows what the appraisers have been calling out, and who has closed plenty of houses to see what actually closes. And that's what you really want to do.
So listing the house at the proper market value, that's not high, it's not low, is a very good way to sell, because it's called the fair market value.
The fair market value, all of real estate, all the associations, everyone wants to be fair in any transaction. So if you're going to put your house on the market, let's say we're talking $1 million, and you go, you know what? I'm going to put it on the market for 1.5. If I get 1.5, I'll leave. If I don't, I won't. Well, people know that right away, and they go, this guy, they're not even going to make an offer on your house because this guy is not motivated to sell or grow, whoever it is. And
the seller.
The seller. Okay, right. I'm sorry, the seller. So you have to be aware when you're pricing your house, you got to be fair. I know you have a lot of maybe sweat equity, but you have to see what your house compared to other houses is going for, and that's the truth. You don't want to be in La La Land or have an agent tell you, oh great, we're going to get X, Y, and Z so they can grab your listing. You want to be real with the numbers.
Do you find that sellers are getting a little greedy?
Well, we all get greedy because it's a market that we can make money. But what I've experienced is that you have one person, you tell them what the price is, and then you have 3 other people telling them a different price because
they start talking to all their friends.
Right. They talk to other agents people are desperate for the listing. These agents make money by having listings, so they're going, oh, he says 1.2, I can get you 1.5.
I have a question. When was the last time one of you guys sold something for the actual original price that was agreed on with you and your seller?
It's been a while.
I mean, aren't all
rare.
of them going over the list price right now?
Yeah. Well, it's surprising because we're even listing homes 5 to 10% above what the current market value is, and we're getting multiple offers. But we like that strategy where the next strategy we'll talk about is called listing low, and that creates a frenzy. It's kind of like throwing blood into the water and watching the sharks go after each other.
It's like anything.
It's a Shark Tank.
Yeah, right. If you go even to buy a car and that vehicle is priced really, really low, you're going to have a lot of offers on it. And there it comes.
Nice, Todd.
There comes the shark.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do when you're pricing it low, like let's go 10% low, people are going to say, they're going to notice, hey, this house is lower than the others. Let's put in a bid. And then what you do is you have an emotional tie with it.
Right. And if you're putting in that bid, you don't want to be the guy who loses the property because of $5,000.
Right.
So you put something in called an escalator clause or an elevator clause. And Frank's going to explain what that is.
Well, that's just saying like I'll pay 10 grand over what the highest price is, because a lot of times it's called the highest and best. So if you have a multiple counteroffer situation, let's say you have 6 deals right in front of you, and you ask people, hey, give me your highest and best offer. Well, the person doesn't want to miss out of 5 grand or 1 grand or 3 grand. So some of them will say, whatever your highest and best price is, we will pay 10 grand over it. And that's called the escalator clause.
But how do you know if that is actually 10,000 over? Like, what if?
Well, you don't.
Yeah.
I
would ask to see the other offers. Just take out the name.
Well, there's confidentiality between.
Right.
It's a fiduciary responsibility, so they don't have to show you that unless you sue them.
But what I found, the vast majority, 99.9% of realtors are honest and hardworking. Is what have been my experience.
There's that one guy.
There's that one guy that you may run across.
Oh yeah,
or a woman.
Yeah. So the next, so pricing low is a great strategy. What about listing the house high? Frank, you touched upon that.
Well, that's something I don't like to do, because what happens is that when you list the price high and you do all the marketing for that house, the seller will typically blame the agent for not bringing him a person. So they'll go, hey, I've been noticing the pictures, and I think you need a different angle of the kitchen. I'm not sure.
They're looking for reasons.
They're looking for reasons.
Yeah.
Hey, the narrative you explained, the pool is being this, but it's really that. And they start picking at it. When the bottom line is it's none of that. It's you price too high, and we have to wait for the right buyer who may or may not show up. Someone has to go, I want that house. I don't care what the price is. I'm going to buy it, which does happen. That's called fishing. You don't know if you're going to get the big whale, or you got to bring it down.
Yeah, you got to reduce the price.
So you have that talk with your client before you even put on the market. Say, listen, here's what I recommend the price. You want to go higher than that. So in 2 weeks, let's visit this, because if we don't get any hits in this market within 2 weeks, there's something going on, and it will be the price. It's always a price, and especially when people say it's not about the price. It's always about the price.
You ever heard that when some people will say, some realtors will say, if I don't sell your house within a certain amount of days, I will buy it myself for a price we both agree on. Correct. And it's what we both agree on.
Well, that's a little tricky because if you have a house for $1 million and you go, if you don't sell it, I'll buy it for $750.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you that part.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to agree to that.
They're not going to agree to that.
He's not going to buy it.
Right. So
it's very simple.
It's just another marketing strategy.
But it's a marketing strategy.
Right.
That's correct. What do you think about that?
There's a few guys, you hear those ads on the radio or see them on television all the time. I can sell this house in 30 days or I'll buy it back. It's that kind of a thing. And you're like, really? Come on.
Well, but the funny thing is, they probably could sell it in 30 days.
Nowadays,
yeah. I mean, I think they're probably telling the truth when they say that, because
the reason why they can say that is because if you agree to the price. So now you're at the meeting. Hey, I heard that you can sell my house in 30 days. I want you to get 1.5 million. Well, the person's not going to take that listing.
Right.
They're going to say, I can sell in 30 days if you listen to me. We're going to price at 950. So there is a cashman there, and the agreement to sell it for the price they both agree on is another strategy.
I'm still curious as to what lenders are financing with all this craziness going on in California.
The prices have gone up 17% 22% in the last 12 months.
Well, I saw in the news this morning that San Diego real estate's worth $627 billion.
Yes.
I mean, and it's gone up $22 billion over
Let's
the last
sell the
year.
entire city and buy
why do you think that is?
Continent somewhere.
Crazy.
Why do you think that is, Tony? Why do you think it's going up?
Supply and demand. That's why it always goes up.
I'll tell you why. It's not as easy as supply and demand. First of all, we have historically low interest rates. They're around 2%. Okay, that's a huge for the buyers. It increases the amount of people that can buy. Number two, we have an inventory problem. San Diego is not building as fast as our population. And they won't, because we have environmentalists and we have a lot of people that don't want building. We have investors that are fleeing our state. And we have taxes that'll stop anyone from building.
Taxes.
So another one is what's going on nationally with the COVID and people getting to work outside of their building. So now people are told, don't come back to your building, work from your house. We got this Zoom wired. You can work anywhere in the country. So where is the best place to live?
San Diego. It's still the best place in the world to live.
It's still cheaper than San Francisco, and we know what's going on in San Francisco.
Cheaper than LA.
Cheaper than LA.
And San Jose.
Right. So the average house.
Not by much, though. It's
Well,
getting there.
Right. It's
And
getting
now,
there.
well, it's getting there, but people are jumping ship and coming to San Diego because it's still, the value is still good. $1 million house for most people in these other areas is no big deal. They have their computer, they're in high tech, they're in pharma, they do all these jobs outside and they can afford it.
But we do need affordable housing. They have to
Well,
have
absolutely. And the city is working on that.
Yeah.
I'm proud of them because they are addressing the fact that it's impossible for any normal person to buy a house. It just is. It's simply impossible. We don't have wages that
Well, it's not
are justified.
impossible because we're selling houses.
Well, it's impossible for the
For
majority of people.
for a lot of people. Oh, yeah.
When you think of affordable housing, sometimes you think like the person who's down and out. No, it's an average person. It's the firefighters, the teachers.
Right.
It's
The nurses.
It's the nurses. It's all these people that go, hey, I can't even live in the city I work in.
Can you believe that a $500,000 home is considered affordable housing?
Yes,
It's like
unbelievable.
crazy.
It's crazy.
Like who makes
But
that kind
you
of
need
cash?
to be able to afford the average home in San Diego.
I wonder
I
how
saw
much money the
you
Beverly
need to
Hills.
make $137,000 a year.
Yes, that's correct. Remember the show The Beverly Hillbillies?
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had a cement pond and they had that big mansion. That just recently sold.
How much did they sell it for?
I don't know.
Then why'd you bring it up, Mark?
Because
why are you leaving us hanging?
Because I bet you a bunch of people are going to Google it now.
All right.
Just look and see how much did the Beverly Hills mansion sell for. Or you can just find out how much it's worth. The funny thing about the internet is that if you really want to find out how much a house sold for or what it's worth, all you have to do is put the address in a Google search tool and tons of stuff pop up on it.
Oh, it's almost scary how much public information you have and whether someone's in a trust, who's holding the title, when they sold it for, the amount of loans they took out. It's all
when
public knowledge.
When
If
you're
the taxes were paid.
Yeah, that's true. If there's, and also you can look up the foreclosure history if there's a notice of default on it.
Oh, that's ugly.
So I'll tell you, when you're working with the Powell brothers, you will realize that a lot of time, effort, thought, and research goes into what should we price your house
That's
at.
the biggest one right there.
It's huge. And we always include the seller in the process. The seller is going to be the one who ultimately determines what the price should be. We'll provide all the information for them to make an informed decision. That's
Correct.
all they need to make an informed decision. And then we move forward from there.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah, it makes some sense.
And it makes the seller feel good because you don't just go, here's what we want to sell it for. You go, this is what we look at. Here's how we do. This is what a comparable analysis looks like. It sounds like a big word, but it's not a big deal. You're just comparing apples to apples. And you said another thing. You want to be within a mile perimeter unless you have acreages. So there's some parts of California, like all the equestrian places, that you may have a couple spaced out 2 or 3 miles. So it depends. Your search area will determine on what type of house you're looking for.
Well,
If you're looking for a farm, you're not going to go a mile, right?
Correct. I'm talking about a suburb.
Yeah,
No, we
so
go
you're
3
talking about a
miles out in the
suburb.
rural areas.
Right, exactly.
And make adjustments. Hey, Frank.
Yeah.
We know about realtors, like, how do we price a house? We know, which realtors are good, but how do we determine which comedy act to see?
Well, that's easy.
I know.
Okay, how do we do that? How?
Well, I can tell you this.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday, July 14th, at the Comedy Store is my show.
Woo!
I'd like to see
We're going to be
everyone
there.
in
But
San
let me
Diego
ask,
there.
I want all my listeners
But
to
why
go.
is it your show?
Because it's my annual birthday show that I do at the Comedy Store.
Oh my!
How many years have you been doing that at the Comedy Store?
Well, with the exception of last year because of COVID, I think it's 26 now.
That's so
okay,
cool.
and how do we get in touch with you, Tony? Give us a little social media.
Facebook, Instagram, and if you want to email me at the letter U, doin, D-O-I-N, at TonyCalabrese.com. If you want tickets, I can put you on the list.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So, and to get a hold of us, just give us a call at 858-922-7725, or you can hit us up on the website at powellbrothersrealty.com.
And if you want to look at our faces and see what we do in the studio, go to YouTube, My Funny House with the Powell Brothers on YouTube, and you will see us in studio here with Tony Calabrese.
With our headsets on.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great Saturday, and we'll look forward to next week with another subject.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today for My Funny House with the Powell Brothers, right here on The Answer San Diego. Join us next week as the Powell Brothers bring you more funny stories of what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership, and bring the laughs to you with yet another hilarious guest comedian. To find out more about the Powell Brothers, be sure to check out their website at powellbrothersrealty.com, or you can visit myfunnyhouse.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week for My Funny House on The Answer San Diego.